Magic the Gathering's upcoming Dungeons & Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set looks absolutely insane. Apparently, we're going to be getting legendary hamsters, we're going to be getting Vecna, the ancient lich who eventually became a god, and even more insanity on top of that.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends, it is teaser day. I honestly look forward to this every time a new set comes out. Mark Rosewater puts out a list of teasers where they give you a taste of what's coming and allow you to try and puzzle out, partially at least, what you can expect to see in the Dungeons & Dragons set. Now, the full spoiler season doesn't really kick off until next week, but regardless, this is a nice, juicy, meaty list of little tidbits that really fired up my imagination. First of all, I never thought Magic the Gathering would have a hamster in it. But anyways, let us get into the list. So it says here at the top, before previews for Dungeons & Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms officially begin, I thought it would be fun to do another of my duelist-style teasers where I give tiny hints of things to come. Note that I'm only giving you partial information, so we don't get the whole picture, and it's interesting to note that this concept has been around since the days of the duelists. There's just something about being given part of a card that's so tantalizing. So, starting out at the top of the list, the first thing we can expect to see in the set is a new enchantment subtype. And I'm curious about this. How are they going to handle the dungeons in the game? Are dungeons going to be some kind of side card that doesn't go in your deck? Are they going to be enchantments? I don't know if it's going to be enchantment subtype dungeon, because enchantment doesn't really feel like the right card type for a dungeon, but ultimately, what does feel like the right card type for a dungeon? I don't really have an easy answer to that. So for some reason, my brain goes to dungeon for that, but ultimately, I can't know that for sure, right? That's totally just an off the top of my head guess. It could be virtually anything, and I'm genuinely curious to see what it will be. The next thing, a card granting -11, -11. What an interesting word choice, granting. Allow me to give you -11, -11. Oh, no thank you, good sir. Don't grant me that at all. So this is obviously going to be some massive creature destruction spell. It could be an enchantment that goes on a creature that gives it -11, -11. It could be an instant or sorcery that goes, boom, give a creature -11, -11. It might be conditional style removal where it's like, pay 2 mana, give target creature -3, -3. Or if you pay 10 mana, then give a creature -11, I mean, 10 mana is a lot, but you get the example. Like, it could be an alternate cost, or you might have to meet some other conditions where it's like, give a creature -3, -3. If you control, like, 3 wizards, then give them -11, -11. And it's like, Witch's Coven, or, some kind of concept like that. Either way, -11, -11 is a huge decrease to be granting, and most creatures aren't going to survive through that. The next item on the list is very interesting. A creature with a death trigger that makes an equipment token. So that's a curious idea. How does that work? So when the creature goes to the graveyard, you make a piece of equipment. Obviously, it's an artifact token. But the question is, what is the equipment? There's a couple of different scenarios I can envision with this. I can envision, let's say you have a particular creature like an Ironhide Rhino or something like that, where like in Dungeons & Dragons, you can go out and slay beasts and take their skin or whatever else and make different gear out of it. So it could be a type of creature that it's whatever parts. It could be its claws, it could be its skin, it could be its hair, whatever it is. You could use that to make particular pieces of equipment. So it could be like that, or it could be basically they've done like a legendary creature who has a particular piece of equipment, and when they go, the equipment lives on, where it's like it's bequeathed to the next generation kind of thing. Take my sword! You know what I mean? One of those. Those are the two main ideas that I get out of this one. Now, the next item is definitely one of the absolute craziest on the list. A legendary creature that makes a legendary hamster creature token. Now, this is Forgotten Realms. I'm thinking Minsk and Boo, right? Like, that's where my brain goes. It seems, if, like, honestly, go and do a search for Dungeons and Dragons hamsters. You're only going to find a couple of results, right? One is Minsk the Ranger and his pet hamster Boo, and then the other option is giant space hamsters. Because apparently, unbeknownst to me, Dungeons and Dragons has space hamsters the size of bears, all right? Dungeons and Dragons is pretty wild, and there's crazy stuff like the Spelljammer and all that, like way out there stuff, but I had no idea giant space hamsters were a thing. And actually, funnily enough, some people insist that Boo, the regular-sized hamster, is actually a miniaturized space hamster that has the ability to communicate with Minsk. So, Minsk is a ranger, Boo is his pet hamster. That is my prediction. It seems like a pretty easy slam dunk choice. I literally can't see anything else that fits the bill. So that, to me, is definitely Boo, hands down. The next item on the list is something only seen previously in Unsets comes to Black Border. Now this isn't that like big of a surprise to me because over time, a lot of concepts that have existed in Unsets have made their way into Magic the Gathering, right? So, I mean, Unsets are technically part of Magic the Gathering, but I consider the world of black borderedness to be the real world of Magic the Gathering. Or if you go back far enough, white borders, they're included too. But ultimately, silver bordered cards, they're pseudo Magic cards to me, right? So they've had a number of different concepts from the Unsets that have made the jump to regular Magic. This one could be any number of things. So I'll admit that on the list of items, this one doesn't excite my imagination that much. But the next one I'm more curious about. An artifact that's a musical instrument that creates harmony counters. So, what do harmony counters do, I wonder? Do you know, is it like going to be some kind of special harp where when you like basically tap it, activate it, put a harmony counter on a creature, all creatures with harmony counters get a bonus, like maybe like a bard is playing to inspire your group and they're getting a bonus? Or, theoretically, it could be maybe like a white aligned artifact that has a pacifism style effect where you put a harmony counter on a creature and creatures with harmony counters can't attack or block because they're enraptured by the harmony of the music, right? So those are my guesses for that concept. It doesn't necessarily have to be a harp. It could be any style of instrument. My brain just for some reason pulls harp as the first. My first choice goes harp, my second choice goes flute, and I can't give any logical reason behind it. It's just a gut feeling, all right? Next item on the list, a card that can keep your opponent from winning the game. So this is probably going to be one of those cards a la Platinum Angel that say like your opponents can't win the game. It doesn't say anything about you can't lose the game, right? Although that's usually the wording. It's like you can't lose the game, your opponents can't win the game. But if they just make it so you can't lose the game in a two-player, I don't know exactly how that would be enforced. So I assume it's going to be very similar to the concept behind Platinum Angel. That's my guess, all right? Next, an ability that cares about attacking with a certain amount of power of creatures. That feels very green to me, where it's probably like attack with creatures power 10 or greater, all your creatures gain +3/+3, and trample until end of turn. And it's just, brah, charging them. That is my gut reaction to that style of like concept. I feel like green, obviously being the color that cares the most about like big beefy creatures, that probably fits into green the best. Now the next one is the most nebulous thing on this list, I think. And that is cards that let you decide where the story goes. I don't know if that's supposed to be a reference to dungeons or whatever, but I really don't even know what that means because the only reference we've ever really had to stories is kind of the Throne of Eldraine storybook sort of showcase cards, but that has clearly nothing to do with this. So that one's got me curious, but it's also almost so nebulous that I just go, okay, I want to know more, but also, I feel like it's too coy. I feel like that statement is too coy. Next, a card that creates a legendary creature token named Vecna. This is crazy to me. Vecna was originally a mortal, all right? And he worshipped like a death god. I'm basically going to give you a short summary here because when we get the real card, we'll go right into it. But anyways, Vecna was a mortal who served a death god, essentially. He stepped up to being a lich, which is an undead sentient wizard. He has a right-hand man that serves him faithfully. Vecna makes him a special sword. Unfortunately, Vecna's way too evil, so his evil influence absorbs into the sword, and the sword convinces right-hand man, yo, bro, let's take Vecna down. So right-hand man, under the control of the sword, is like, all right, whatever. Hacks off Vecna's hand. Basically, Vecna has to dispel him. Vecna ends up losing his mortal form, and then eventually he's able to, in a non-corporeal form, become a demigod. And then he makes a bid for godhood, which fails miserably. But he bides his time, and over centuries, he makes another bid for it, and eventually becomes a god. And if you're like familiar with old school Dungeons and Dragons, there's like an old relic, the Hand of Vecna. It's literally the mummified hand of like when Vecna was a mortal, and it's like a powerful and also very heavily cursed magical artifact in Dungeons and Dragons. So the fact that there's going to be a Vecna, like a card that creates a legendary creature token named Vecna, is like phylactery or whatever, because liches have to have an item that they imbue their essence into, and as long as that item exists, then the lich continues onwards. But if you destroy that item, you destroy the lich because their life essence is housed in it. So this is like, dude, this is the most exciting item on the list for me by a long shot. I love it. So, next, here are some rules text that'll be showing up on cards. Enchanted Permanent is a treasure artifact. So I guess basically either it adds the ability to sacrifice the card basically the same way you would a treasure, or it overwrites whatever it is and turns it into a treasure artifact. Like Turn to Gold, like Midas Touch, where it's like whatever you touch turns to gold. So it's no longer what it was. Now it's just a hunk of gold you can sacrifice as a treasure token. So that's cool. That's got some cool flavor concept. Then we've got Ward, discard a card. Now Ward is a new ability to Magic the Gathering. The first time we saw it was in Strixhaven, where it's a variation of an older ability where basically in the olden days, cards would say, if your opponent wants to cast a spell that targets this, they have to pay 2 more as an additional cost. But Ward is a new version that says, okay, you can target me with your spell, but then afterwards you have to pay this cost. So basically, the ward cost in this case, if you want to target whatever's warded here, you have to discard a card. And that is a very heavy cost indeed. That is a powerful ward, and I like that. Then we've got Exchange Your Hand and Your Library. Good lord, that's probably going to be a pretty expensive spell to cast, I imagine. Where you're going to take whatever's in your hand, turn it into your deck, and turn your deck into your hand. People are going to... That sounds like it's probably going to be a lot of fun for Commander or people who like to use spellbook-style spells where it's like, boom, I have a Library of Lang. I have infinite hand size. Like, that's a pretty interesting concept. It feels like it's probably going to be blue, but it could also be a black card. Then we've just got a quote that says skeletons, vampires, and zombies. So maybe this is some kind of undead lord that gives a bonus to a bunch of the undead that you control. Then we've got one that's going to be good for the dragon enthusiasts that I know. I know Nathan's going to be excited. Spend this mana only to cast dragon spells or activate abilities of dragons. So clearly it's going to accelerate you, but only for dragons. And that screams that it's red. Okay, so... continuing onwards, we have another card that says, for each different mana value among non-land cards in your graveyard. That could be something as simple as this creature gets +1/+1 for each different mana value among non-land cards in your graveyard. Although it could be a number of different effects. For each different mana value among non-land cards in your graveyard, gain a life, return a creature card to your hand. There are a lot of possibilities. Next is, then if you have fewer than 3 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. So basically it's probably something along the lines of discard any number of cards. Then if you have fewer than 3 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. I could see that. That feels like a red ability. Whenever you cast a creature spell that doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard. That has potential. That could be something pretty interesting. It could be life gain, card draw, add a mana to your pool. There's a number of options. These are very open-ended. The next one, you may cast this creature's name from your graveyard if a creature not named this creature's name died this turn. Okay, so it's a creature that can reanimate itself off the life force of other creatures, but can't be used if it died that turn. Interesting. It's like a weird kind of variation of like necro regeneration. That's what it feels like. Oh, whoa, what's this one? When its power becomes 20 this way. I don't remember seeing this the first time I looked through the list. Somehow this one eluded me. So something that grows a power up to 20, and when its power becomes 20, either something good or something bad happens. It depends, right? If they make this creature like cheaper or more effective than it should be, and it can get super powerful, then it could be when its power becomes 20, it disappears, it goes away, whatever, right? Or it could be when power becomes 20, then it goes insane, like maybe like some kind of leveling up style ability, right? There are multiple options for this, but I have to admit the number 20 is a big and exciting number, right? That equals people's life total, plus it's a number tied to Dungeons and Dragons, so it's got that going for it as well. It definitely excites my imagination. Big numbers excite me. I'm a simple man. You give me something like a Giganosaurus and I go, hey, giant 10-10, come smash your face. You know, like, sure, I can enjoy the subtle manipulative style cards too, but honestly, there's just something gratifying about big, dumb numbers. It's just like, yes, make the numbers as big as possible. So let us continue, my friends. Finally, here are some card type lines in the set. So we've got a dwarf citizen. Admittedly, that's not that exciting. What's he going to do for you? It's like, hey, can you show me around town, buddy? Where can I get a nice lunch? Then we've got a tiefling wizard. Oh, they're bringing tieflings in. Okay. Tiefling, honestly, it feels like one of the newer races for Dungeons and Dragons. I'll admit that off the top of my head, my brain goes, is this the new term for like halflings / hobbits, right? Have they upgraded it to tiefling to give it like its own kind of flavor? Because halfling does make it just feel like you're like half a man, right? You're like half a person. So maybe that's what that is. I feel like that's the case. You can verify that for me. It's funny. I know a bunch of stuff about Dungeons and Dragons, but it tends to be older stuff, and I don't remember ever encountering tieflings in 2nd edition. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't exist then. It just means that I have no experience with them. So, like a little halfling wizard, cast a spell and go have second lunch. Although, I guess that kind of doesn't really play over. They didn't steal that concept from the Lord of the Rings. All right, so next we've got a human elf monk. Oh, half elf. Cool. Right on. That's neat, man. Half-elven characters are definitely a thing in Dungeons and Dragons, right? The most famous half-elven that I can think of, the one that first comes to my mind, is Tanis from Dragonlance. Now, Dragonlance isn't the same as Adventures in the Forgotten Realm. Obviously, we're not going to see Tanis, and he wasn't a monk. But the idea of half-elves is really cool to me. Then we've got Elf Spider. Oh, dude. Doing Driders? Is that what it is? Oh man, they've got Loth in the set, right? Loth is the evil spider queen goddess, right? And the servants of her are the drow, these evil elves. And basically what they do is they convert people into these big bloated kind of beasts that are half elf, half spider, and like birth more generations of spiders and beasts and stuff. Oh, it's just vile. Like they turn elves into driders, which are like spider beasts, and then when the driders get old and can't do that much anymore, then the other driders like turn on them and bite them and fill them full of poison, and then they turn into this big bloated almost half corpse that like breeds a bunch more of them that burst out of it. It's pretty vicious and vile, in all honesty. That might be what's going on here. That's cool. Then we've got a gnome warlock. Yes, man. Gnomes. I love it. Gnome warlock. That's cool. We got Halfling Rogue. Oh, no, okay, never mind what I said about Tiefling. Clearly, I should have just read further down the screen. Some of you probably read the list and are like ahead of me and are like, it says Halfling on the screen. Shut up about Tieflings. So, clearly they're separate things. Question answered. Then we've got a Bird Bear. Maha! Brah! That's funny. We got Dragon Knight. Devil God. Yeah, Devil God. And Beholder, a legendary Beholder. That's most likely going to be Xanathar. And if you don't know about Xanathar, I have a lore video about the Xanathar over on my other channel, Fantasy Geographic. And I just released a new lore video there yesterday. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 lore videos up here on the screen. One talking about Dungeons and Dragons, one talking about magic. And I guess the Dungeons and Dragon one is also technically a magic one now since it'll be overlapped. Anyhow, check them out. Go enjoy some lore. Thanks for coming by. Big shout out to all my patrons, and I will see you all, my friends, next time.